and welcome to the Actual Tech Media EcoCast. My name is Jess, and I am excited to be here with you all today. But before we jump into our content, I have some basic information that I want to cover with you. All right, let's kick off our day here today by taking a quick tour of your audience console. And we're going to start with the questions window. So if you haven't already said hi, there is a whole audience of cool humans out there, so reach out and give a wave to the other members of the Actual Tech Media community. Now, keep in mind that if you do have any technical issues today, a browser refresh is going to fix just about anything. But if those tech gremlins are clinging on today, no problem. Just throw a comment in the question section and our crew will be there to help. We also want this to be an informative webinar for you, so throughout today's EcoCast, we hope you'll get engaged and ask all your burning questions. Not only will we have team members responding to you over a live chat, we will also have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of our presentations. Now, if we don't get to your question during the live webinar today, don't worry, because the awesome experts that we have here with us will be following up after we wrap. All right, next up, there's going to be lots of cool aha moments on the EcoCast today, and if you want to share those with your community, we've made it nice and easy for you. You can use the Twitter button right there in your audience console, and the hashtag for today's EcoCast will be automatically added to your post. All right, our last stop on this guided tour, be sure to check out the Handouts tab for some awesome resources and takeaways from our speakers here today. We have an info pack collection, solution briefs, white papers, data sheets, free trials, ebooks, upcoming webinars, and more. So many great resources, so be sure to go explore. Now, if that wasn't enough fun, we also have some exciting prizes that we'll be giving away throughout today's EcoCast. I'm going to tell you a bit more about those later on, but a few quick reminders for you all. First, you do need to be here live in attendance at the EcoCast in order to qualify to win a prize, and we will follow up with all of you after we wrap. Now, all winners must submit an IRS Form W-9 to Actual Tech Media, and all winners must meet the Actual Tech Media prize terms and conditions. Now, if you don't know what those full T's and C's are, that's fine. We've got the full thing for you. Just head on over to that Handouts tab, click in, scroll down to the bottom, and you'll find them waiting for you there. Now, the absolute most important thing to remember is that we love getting all your insightful questions during these live webinars. In fact, we love it so much that we actually have a special additional prize for all you inquisitive folks out there. So in today's EcoCast, we will be giving away a prize for the best question asked in each of our live sessions. Now, the expert speakers and teams will review all questions asked after we wrap the webinar, which means that even if your question does not get read out in a live session, there is still a chance to win. If you are a lucky winner here today and you would like to donate the value of your prize, we have several wonderful organizations that we partner with. So let us know when we follow up about your big win, and we'll get that rolling for you. Again, we are so happy to have you all here with us live at the EcoCast today, and we want to keep that good feeling going, so let's connect on social media. Reach out and connect with Actual Tech Media on Twitter and on LinkedIn. We have lots of great content, and we always want to hear from you. Now, if you're looking for more awesome content and resources right after we wrap the EcoCast today, be sure to subscribe to the Actual Tech Media channel on YouTube. Another fun way to win a prize and, hey, grow this awesome community is to refer an industry friend or a coworker to the Actual Tech Media webinar series. Now, you'll find a link to do that right in your Handouts tab, and you will also be automatically redirected at the end of the webinar. And both you and your coworker or friend could win a prize, and we hold those drawings every month. So be sure to refer a friend because, hey, it could quite literally be a win-win situation. Next, we have a cool opportunity for all the decision makers out there to get connected with new and emerging tech and innovative vendors. Here's how it works. All you need to do is click on the link in your Handouts tab, fill out a quick application, and the Actual Tech crew will then match you with some vendors that we think you should probably be chatting with based on your needs. There will also be fun opportunities that you get to choose to join in, like surveys, test runs, new solutions, extended demos, and so on. You'll get some chances to win extra prizes, you'll chat with great people, and you'll learn about the hottest new trends in tech. So be sure to apply, or hey, send that link to a decision maker on your team. Now, I want to take a quick minute here to remind you all about one of my favorite resources, and that is ransomware.org. You can find out everything you need to know about ransomware, how to prepare, prevent, and recover. This site is jam-packed with information, helpful tips, checklists, strategic approaches, case studies, everything you need in one place. So wherever you are in your ransomware preparedness journey, there is something for you at ransomware.org. Go check it out and start exploring. All right, I have one more exciting resource I have to tell you about today, and that is the Gorilla Guide Book Club. It's going to give you access to free enterprise IT books authored by top industry experts, so you can stay up to date on trending enterprise technology. And yes, these books will work on your Kindle, your mobile device, and as I said, they are completely free. You can download these awesome resources at gorilla.guide, and there's a link for you in that handouts tab as well. All right, well, we have covered a lot of important things already, and I don't know about you all, but I am excited to dive in. So let's get going. All right, folks. Well, it is time to jump into the good stuff here, because today we are talking about supercharging your Kubernetes environment and cloud native apps. I am so excited to get into this conversation with all of you today, because there's just so much to explore when it comes to the opportunities around these cloud native apps and your Kubernetes environments. Lots to get into. Now, most of you probably know that the word Kubernetes comes from the Greek word for helmsman, so our captain, our pilot, and today we have some incredible Kubernetes captains here with us from Rubrik and from Kasten by Veeam. And they are going to help us navigate as we explore their innovative solutions, hottest tips, trends, and best practices. Now, I know that you are all ready. You're pumped up. You've had that first cup of coffee. You're ready to start learning some cool things. So we are going to get rolling in just a second here. But I want to give you a little bit of information before we get started that's going to help you get the most out of our day together. Now, first up, again, my name is Jess Steinbach. I'm a moderator here at Actual Tech Media. My friends and fellow moderators, Scott Becker is here with us on live chat, and Keith Ward is waiting in the wings to interview our wonderful keynote speaker, which we'll get to in just a moment. But before we do, I know you are all wondering about prizes, so let's talk about that. Today on the EcoCast, you could win one of three $300 Amazon gift cards that we will be giving away to three lucky winners who are here present and live with us at the EcoCast. Now, I mentioned this in the housekeeping chat this morning, but you can find the full terms and conditions linked for you in the handouts tab. So if you have any questions about those T's and C's, click on over and start exploring. Okay, that is all the stuff we need to get through. Now we can get started on the awesome content. I am so excited to introduce our keynote speaker, who has been in this industry a long time and has no shortage of interesting insight to add to our conversation today. And that is, of course, Dan Sullivan, Cloud Architect. Now, Keith, I know you are waiting in the wings with Dan, so I'm going to step back and hand things on over to you both. Keith, take it away.
Hi, everyone, and welcome. So glad to see you today for this keynote discussion on supercharging your Kubernetes environment and cloud native apps. Joining me right now is Cloud Architect and author of many books and articles for me and other people over the years, Dan Sullivan. Dan, it's so good to have you here today. Welcome.
Hey, Keith, thanks. I'm glad to be able to join you again.
It's always a pleasure for me. So let's dive right in as usual. Can you
Okay.
tell me, Dan? Let's start with kind of a definitional question here. What makes a system a cloud native app?
Okay, well, there's several sort of factors that come into play when we think about cloud native apps. Basically, the idea or the term cloud native comes from basically exploiting the cloud technologies that we have available to us. From a practical perspective, like from an architecture perspective, that means we're typically dealing with microservices. So rather than maybe building a monolithic service or maybe a 2 or 3 tiered service, we have many services, but they tend to be smaller. So we containerize these smaller services, and in Kubernetes world, we have additional layers of abstraction that we can work with, things like pods and deployments and stateful sets. So when we talk about a cloud native app, we're in this world of microservices that are containerized. We also find a lot of automation within sort of the cloud native app world. Some other characteristics that we find are that cloud native apps are really designed to be resilient and scalable. So we can kind of adjust the amount of resources we commit, how much memory, how much CPU we dedicate to particular services, how we distribute them. So maybe over multiple zones or multiple regions to make them more highly available. Those are some of the key characteristics. And then some other features, maybe to a lesser extent, is maybe an adoption of managed services, especially around like databases. It can be, we certainly run databases within Kubernetes, but also having a managed service that's maybe external to some of your other self-managed services can be a really useful approach sometimes to kind of shift some of the burden of managing some services to managed services. So I'd say those are kind of the key characteristics of cloud native apps.
So then, given what you've just explained, and one of the things I heard coming out of that in the subtext was these suckers are complex. There's just so much there. So then, why use Kubernetes with them? How does that help with all of that?
Well, one of the big drivers with Kubernetes is it is basically this really well-designed mechanism for dealing with sort of abstract resources. And so we have resources like we have pods and we have stateful sets, and we have deployments of microservices that are containerized. And Kubernetes brings a lot of the sort of the core cloud native app functionality to the table for us. So as a developer, we don't necessarily have to worry about how are we going to make the application resilient and think about things like health checks. Well, a lot of those things are built into Kubernetes. So we can say, I'd like to run 3 replicas of this particular service, or I'd like to scale between 4 and 8, depending on the load. And Kubernetes will manage that for us automatically. So a lot of the deployment work, a lot of the management work that we associate with running complex systems is managed for us by Kubernetes. So we define a lot of things by policies. We declare, I want this, this, and this, and Kubernetes will make sure that our cloud native app is running in the desired state. And if it veers out of that desired state, something runs out of memory, we have to maybe move a container off of a particular node because it needs to be serviced. Kubernetes manages that. So basically, Kubernetes is a platform that enables a lot of these cloud native features that we really want to have without us as developers and architects having to build them over and over again.
Gotcha. Okay, so um, when we're building and deploying Kubernetes, it's still fairly new technology. It's been out for a while now, but a lot of people still don't have much experience with it. For those folks, can you give us a couple of your best practices and maybe a gotcha or two when it comes to building and deploying in Kubernetes environments?
Yeah, I would say probably the biggest thing to remember is that when we're building cloud native apps, there are a lot of moving parts, more so than the old days of, n-tiered kind of application development. So we want to keep that in mind, that there are a lot of moving parts, which means we really have to think about automation right from the beginning. There are just too many pieces, and the states that we can get into can be complex combinations of things, and we might have unusual behaviors. So we don't want to kind of track that in our heads all the time. So we really want to think in terms of exploiting Kubernetes for what it does, which is this provides us a way of declaratively saying, I want this particular state in my application, and I want to follow these policies. Really want to take advantage of those things. We also want to take advantage of some of the capabilities that are built into Kubernetes or Kubernetes adjacent tooling. So things like monitoring and logging. Because there are so many moving parts, we want to make sure we have good observability into those parts. And also, we need to remember that Kubernetes allows us to build these really flexible systems, but that flexibility comes with complexity. And some of that complexity has ripple effects. So for example, backing up a monolithic system is in many ways a lot simpler than backing up a microservices architecture. So when we're thinking about things like disaster recovery, backups, snapshots, we really want to think about the state of your system, which isn't just it's not just the sum of the parts of each pod being in a certain state. We need to when we think about disaster recovery and building backups, we want to be able to restore your Kubernetes platform and your application to a particular state, and that means tracking a lot of different moving parts. So backup is a lot more complicated. And so we just want to keep that in mind. We want to make sure our tools are up to the task. So I would say, yeah, watch out for backups, watch out for complexity, and really think in terms of automation right from day one. I would say those are probably the key takeaways I would like people to have from this talk.
Sure. And microservices, which is really at so much of the core of all this, are very transient. You know, they're created and destroyed like containers much more often than we've ever seen before, which has its advantages and disadvantages. You know, as you have pointed
Yes.
out. Just really good information, Dan. Using Kubernetes, it can be fraught. There's a lot that can go wrong
Hmm.
along with all of those advantages. So it is definitely to your advantage to take your time to plan it out ahead of time. What is going to go where, and not to rush in because a lot can go wrong. And so Dan, I want to thank you for this overview and showing us more about how to supercharge Kubernetes environments in with cloud native apps. I mean, it's the future, I think, and the future is here
Mm.
now. It's not going anywhere, so it's time to start looking into this for sure. Thank you so much for your time and for the information you provided.
Oh, thanks, Keith. It's been a pleasure again, as always. Really enjoyed these topics.
Yeah, such a great way to start out our conversation today, and I really want to extend that thank you to you, Dan, for giving us such a great level set and a wonderful way to kick off our EcoCast. Before we jump into our first expert speaker, who is ready to go, and we've got lots of great stuff coming your way, we want to do a quick question for all of you. So this is your test run to see if you're awake, if you're alive, if you're out there and paying attention. So right now, click on the screen. Let us know, what is your time frame for adding new or updating existing IT solutions at your company. So today, obviously, we're zooming in. We're talking about Kubernetes. We're talking about cloud native apps. So when you're thinking about these sorts of integrations and upgrades and evolutions at your organization, is this more urgent, short term? You need to make a change right away, or are you thinking a little longer term? Is it strategic? Are you researching? You have no idea, but this is on your radar, and you just want to see what's out there. All of those answers are great. There are no wrong answers here. Just let us know where you're at. And I have to say, I'm seeing a pretty good mix today with maybe a little bit more of a skew towards that not sure. And that is a great way to start out an EcoCast, because that means there's lots of cool stuff to cover, and there's lots that you guys are going to get out of the conversation today. Speaking of which, I think it's time that we get this day rolling. It is my absolute pleasure to introduce you all to our first expert presenter here on the EcoCast, and I love starting any day with the Rubrik crew. So our very first expert presenter here to kick us off is Donna Wien, Staff Product Manager at Rubrik. Donna, thank you so much for being here to start out our EcoCast today. Now, I know you have a lot of great stuff planned for us. We've got a demo and all kinds of fun things in the wings. So I am going to step back and hand things right on over to you. Take it away, Donna.
Oh, thank you, Jess. How's my audio?
I can hear you loud and clear.
All right. Yes, thank you. I'm looking forward to presenting today. As Jess mentioned, I'm Donna Wien, Staff Product Manager at Rubrik. I look after our Kubernetes and cloud native strategy and product line. So I'm excited to be here today, and especially on this topic. I've been working with Kubernetes for to date myself really since 2016, early inception here. So hopefully I can answer any of your questions along the way. I'm going to get this started. Love the topic of supercharging your Kubernetes environment. Here at Rubrik, when we think about Kubernetes, I think about it in terms of data protection. So that's going to be my focus today, and look forward to your questions. So you have to start every webinar with numbers, right? So what's the current state of Kubernetes adoption? When you think about Kubernetes being mainstream, it's been 2 years, right? Where you're looking at Kubernetes moving into the enterprise, IT operations, taking control of Kubernetes at scale, and deploying hundreds, if not thousands, of containerized applications on Kubernetes. So yeah, again, with numbers, there is a conversation or trend that's going on today that's really about, we're mainstream, but is it slowing down? In the past year, has the adoption of Kubernetes slowed down? And what we're seeing is that it's not slowing down. There are still some challenges, like any new or emerging technology as it goes mainstream. You have to focus on, where your expertise is at, right? Do you hire within, or do you outsource? Do you move to cloud? So expertise is one of our challenges that I see personally at Rubrik. The other one, that coming from a data protection and security lens, I see a lack of real clear ownership. As Kubernetes and Docker, right? As it moves from the developer into IT ops, you have IT ops who owns the deployment and the management and the day in and day out life cycle, right, of Kubernetes infrastructure. But who's protecting it, right? How are you backing up the applications that are deployed on Kubernetes, Kubernetes itself? That's where the clear ownership starts to get a little muddy. You have IT ops, you have a centralized storage, sometimes storage separated from your backup team, and they still operate in those silos, and that is still here today. So I run into a lot of enterprises that still have your DevOps on one side of the fence, and you have your storage team and backup teams that deal with compliance on the other side. So lack of clear ownership is a real challenge, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. I also still continue to see the trend toward a public cloud provider. It lends more to, I don't have the expertise to be a provider of the cloud infrastructure and the paths, right, like Kubernetes. So I'm going to move it to cloud and let the experts like an AWS and Azure and Google help maintain the infrastructure or the core components of a Kubernetes cluster, while we focus on the business. We focus on the applications that are being deployed there. So that continues to be a key factor for cloud adoption, for multi-cloud and hybrid cloud adoption, is the fact that because the expertise is low, right? They're still building on those expertise. The lack of clear ownership being another one of the challenges. Let's move it over to public cloud. We have, we can lean on those cloud providers to help us with that shared responsibility. So that overcomes the experience and expertise on the learning curve, but there are still continued challenges. And those challenges right now, as we see it, and you all should go out and there's a Red Hat, the State of Kubernetes Security. It's a 2023 report. It's a great report on the security challenges, and security is a #1 concern right now around Kubernetes. So it's not just the day-to-day operations, but how do I lock it down? There's a lot of moving parts. Kubernetes is very complex. And then when you add data protection and security, then we just exponentially increase that complexity. So when you talk about the numbers of Kubernetes adoption, is it slowing down? No, it's not slowing down. But one thing's very clear: security a concern. Data protection, security go hand in hand. It's protecting the data, it's protecting your assets, and having that data in immutable storage, right, to prevent that malicious attack, that ransomware that we all hear often. It's almost on a daily basis now, right? So, when talking with customers that are evaluating Rubrik or existing Kubernetes customers that are using our Rubrik Kubernetes data protection product, one of the things to note is that the market is still very dynamic. You're going to talk to several vendors, and each one of us will have a specific focus and core competency. And your choice of vendor will be dependent on, I'm sure it's going to go beyond just data protection of Kubernetes and the applications and data that are deployed on it. It's ease of use, and there's other factors, other criteria that we'll talk about in a little while. But the market is very dynamic. So there's plenty of vendors, and each one of them attacking the problem from the application down into the infrastructure, the back-end storage. But the vendors of choice that are coming out ahead are the ones that are application-centric. They are native to Kubernetes. They understand the storage interface and how to move data from your Kubernetes cluster to, right, an immutable storage, whether that's S3 or, like Rubrik, we have our own appliance cloud cluster, as well as using an alternative S3 object storage for our backend. But every vendor is going to have an organic approach to protecting Kubernetes and the applications. What you want to look for is someone that is organically building from the ground up as being a Kubernetes native application. So why Rubrik? We're going to dive into that. So when you, let's see, about a year ago, we GA'd our first release of Kubernetes data protection. And the one thing I love about the Rubrik solution is that one of the challenges I mentioned before was really around expertise, and then the challenge of who owns what within the context of deploying and managing Kubernetes, but also the protection, right, use case. And most of the customers that I work with, they're in their very early adoption of Kubernetes, not yet in production, have many dev test pre-prod clusters, but not quite at the production cluster. And then when they do have a Kubernetes production cluster, they're wanting to address the data protection problem statement with a traditional tool, right? And I've seen many fail, right? Because it's not just about taking a snapshot of a VM that's hosting an application in Kubernetes. It's about distributed microservices. It's about understanding that these containers are distributed across the entire cluster, and if they're stateful, have a persisted volume that also needs to be protected. And so you do that with Rubrik. We have a unified platform that I'll be demonstrating today. This single pane of glass of this unified platform has API extensibility for any task, if you will, on any workload that we support in the UI. But also I mentioned from a Kubernetes perspective, we deploy natively, but it's all done easily from that backup operator who is acting on behalf of the DevOps team, right? Many a times I come to the table, I'm actually talking to the backup operator, the storage engineer, and they're bringing a developer to the table to walk them through exactly what needs to be protected, but they're the ones that are responsible for the protection. So we make it super easy for the backup operator to treat Kubernetes as they do on the surface, right, like any other workload. We protect it with our world-class immutable storage. And again, our focus is to ensure that we help remove some of that complexity that I mentioned earlier in the day in, day out management of Kubernetes, right? As a provider of infrastructure, how do I make it easy for not only to protect those applications, but make it easy for other, like the developers and app owners, even to consume it. And that's what we do here at Rubrik. Lastly, we all want to move to the demo, I know it. So what are some of the design criteria? When you think about Rubrik, or even the data protection market for Kubernetes, there's a set of key criteria that you, as our customer, should be evaluating. You want to ensure that you have a vendor that focuses on native capabilities within Kubernetes, and we can do that across multiple distributions. So the Cloud Native Compute Foundation, CNCF, has over 60 Kubernetes distributions. We're not going to protect all 60, but we are going to protect the most common Kubernetes distributions with the latest versions of Kubernetes. And we're going to do that across multiple clouds. We started with an on-prem solution, and that same solution is extended into AWS, Azure, and Google. That's almost a tongue tire. We take an API first policy. So whether you're Rubrik and calling a GraphQL API, or you want to simply leverage the kubectl native API, we extend our backup protection, right, our recovery operations through custom resource definitions for those that are familiar with Kubernetes, and extending Kubernetes through CRDs. We make it, like I mentioned, super easy to use through that unified UI. Global SLA policies, this is important. If you look at one single pane of glass and creating a policy for compliance, you don't want to create a policy for every different workload. You want to create it once and apply to all different workloads. Or you want to be able to go directly to an object and override that with a specific, more granular SLA. And you can do that with Rubrik. All of that is automated. Disaster recovery use cases we support, application and data mobility, the ability to take a snapshot of an entire namespace and its data and move it to another Kubernetes cluster or recover it in place. And of course, it goes without saying, RBAC roles. We can do it within the Rubrik UI and apply it once and have that inherited across multiple personas, or at the Kubernetes cluster on the actual API. So let's go to the demo. I want to be conscious of time.
I'm here to let you know when I can see you.
Okay. How's that look?
We got a nice black screen. Yeah, there we go. There's the beautiful UX. All yours, Donna. Take it away.
There's the Rubrik, beautiful. So what you're looking at right now is our dashboard for data protection. We have several different dashboards for continuous data protection, unstructured data, and other capabilities. But this is our common dashboard that a backup admin will land on. And then what I'm going to do is actually hop into our inventory. And this is really what I was showing in the deck that I just shared, is that as you can see here, Kubernetes is a tile along with other workloads that Rubrik protects. And the ease of use, or that common usability, navigation on how to protect an object, is extended to Kubernetes. So as you can see here, you're in a UI. I've already onboarded an EKS Kubernetes cluster, so not a lot to share here. As you walk through in onboarding of a cluster, one of the things I want to point out is that it doesn't matter that it's EKS, AKS, an Azure managed Kubernetes cluster or an on-prem OpenShift. It's a one way, right? It's a common way to onboard these different distributions and manage them all from this same single pane of glass. We have, depending on how you're, I've got customers that have over 300 Kubernetes clusters spread across on-prem and in cloud. And how do you make it easy to identify that one Kubernetes cluster that you want to go in and you might have to do a recovery like of a namespace? You can search at the cluster level here for that specific cluster. If your list is short like mine is. Once you click on that hyperlink and go into the cluster here, you can see that we actually auto-discover a list of namespaces. And within this namespace view, what you can see at a glance is that the namespaces themselves, you can see the bound persisted volume claims. So, in my experience, customers are still dipping their toe into data protection, right? And deploying or refactoring applications to deploy on Kubernetes, and it's still ephemeral. It's still, even though we talk a lot about the maturity of the stateful application, the stateful set deployment on Kubernetes, I'm still seeing the majority of customers deploy the stateless application. So here, though, you do see that I have a couple of workloads that have a persisted volume or within the namespace. And if we were to continue to dive into where that persisted volume was at, we could do that by looking at the last snapshot taken and go through an actual recovery. So within the recovery of that namespace, we can recover the entire namespace, or we can browse the namespace to select a persisted volume. The our next release that I'm excited to share is that we'll be able to be more granular at identifying applications within the namespace and the data to protect and to recover those individual applications in place and in another Kubernetes cluster on-prem or in the cloud. The one thing I will say is that the easy button for your admin is at the namespace, right? You're looking at, I'm just going to take an entire snapshot of the namespace, and I want to be able to recover the data, or I want to recover the actual state and configuration and the data. So here you can do that. And you can restore the namespace in place, as I mentioned, or export it to another Kubernetes cluster. So I'm going to back out of that. But this is, as I mentioned, this is a good way to view what you have in the namespace that is protected, the number of workloads within that namespace. Here you'll see we have an SLA, a global SLA assigned to the namespace. This actually is derived. And what derived means is that it happened and it was inherited from the cluster. So if a Rubrik admin, we have many Rubrik admins, wants the easy button, right? And they're acting on behalf of the app teams, then let me apply that policy that, on the cluster itself and let that get inherited down. So inherited down through the namespaces and the data. Or you'll see here one as well, direct. And that means that, applying bronze to the namespace is a direct override of that cluster, of that SLA. right? Typical take an on-demand snapshot of the namespace. We have the ability to easily leverage any global SLA across. If it's created for one workload, it'll be applied to Kubernetes cluster. It's all done within the single UI. And then lastly, I'm often asked about the API, right? I won't be doing any CLI demos for today, but if you were a Rubrik admin and you wanted to inspect the APIs, then you could inspect the API simply by going into the Rubrik extension and review the API code capture here. And you can automate every action that I step through here using our Rubrik GraphQL API. If you want to go the other route and do all operations through kubectl, native Kubernetes API, you can do that as well. So that's it from me that I wanted to share today. I want to open it up for questions.
Awesome. Don, I do want to let you know that we are still seeing your screen if you want to stop screen sharing.
Ah, okay.
There we go. We're back. Yes, love it. Just in case, you start checking email or something, you want to, we'll just come along with you the rest of the day.
Very nice, very nice.
Yes, Donna, thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. That was so interesting. And I love that we finished it off with the demo, because you're right. And you teased this, as you were going through, that people were excited to get into the platform. And that is always the case. It's so nice to get a little bit of the why and the how, and then to actually see it in action is pretty exciting. And, I've said this many times in many presentations, so the audience has heard this before, but I love the Rubrik user experience. I love the interface. It is so easy to walk through. It's beautiful. That is important. And it has a really nice flow to it. So it's really easy to get the information that you need. And you guys have done a great job. We also just got a message from Vinay, who says, I'm a big fan of Rubrik. So you've got some fans out there in the audience already.
Yay!
All right. Well, I want to dig into a few of these questions here because we're a little short on time. While we're doing that, for those of you out there who haven't already started doing this, there's a little wish list up on the screen here right now. What additional information would you like to get about the Rubrik solution? By clicking on that wish list, all your dreams will come true, because Rubrik will send you exactly what you're wishing for. So whether that's a case study, a data sheet, a customer, I said case study, white papers, whatever you got, Rubrik's going to send it your way. So click on that and make sure that you get the info that you need. All right, Donna, let's start with this one here. Can you talk, you were talking a little bit more about the namespaces and how important those are. And we got a couple of questions, so I want to come back to that, because it sounds like things are changing. So are they able to actually restore namespaces to another Kubernetes cluster? Is that possible?
Yes. Yeah, that's what, I think if you're looking at evaluating solutions, that's the one criteria that's kind of table stakes, is that individual namespaces you're able to protect them, and all the state configuration data, right? The persisted volume, all of that related to that namespace, you're able to protect and in place, or move that to another cluster. So yeah, definitely a good question.
We had a couple of questions. We get a lot of different sizes of organizations. So of course, two things come up. One is training and support, and the other one is cost. And, making sure that that there's going to be training and support available for smaller teams that maybe don't have the big teams internally. And then also that the cost makes sense for a smaller team. So I'm kind of throwing two questions at you at once, Donna, because we're a little short on time. But I'm wondering if you can just give us a sort of a quick and easy answer, is in terms of the human resources and the financial resources, is this going to work for smaller teams as well as the larger enterprises?
Oh, definitely. For the smaller team, you're really looking at, again, if you go back into that demo and see that all workloads are showing up into, right, that UI to, that I was showing. But, Kubernetes is part of that license experience. You're not paying for individual node counts. You're not limited to a specific set of nodes. You're actually licensing our software in the cloud, right? If you're a subscriber, or on-prem, you're doing that once, and you get the advantages of that one license to get our Kubernetes data protection. So for the smaller team, yeah, definitely. I mean, the whole advantage of using our Rubrik Security Cloud is that your usability on one workload transfers easily, right? If you're wearing multiple hats, then the usability of protecting a VM versus protecting a namespace will be easily, it will be an easy transition. So, and then again, I see it transfer easily to a down market as well as up market. Most of my customers are probably in the middle. Probably you're looking at 1,000 to 5,000 range of employees, but we definitely deal with the globals in 50,000 employees and above. They're more mature Kubernetes deployments.
It's just a whole city at that point. I'm always amazed at how big some of these organizations get. All right. Well, Donna, I wish we could keep going because there are still a few questions here. And if you do have some time to stick around on live chat, we can get some answers back. Also, we will make sure that all of these questions get sent to your team so that we can respond to them over email as well. So for anyone out there that asked a question that we didn't get to, keep those questions coming in because Donna and the Rubrik crew will get back to you. Before you leave us though, Donna, if somebody out there does want to jump in and get started learning more about Rubrik right away, what do you recommend as that first step?
Oh, yeah, definitely. That first step is to hop onto the Rubrik.com website. We have a lot of demos out there. You can also find demos out on YouTube. That's what I do, is that I myself, when I want to learn, I'll just go out to the primary website. You'll see some demos across our workloads as well. Recommend you to go to YouTube. We have some assets there. And then reach out to me. I know we've got some existing customers out there that didn't even know that we protected Kubernetes. So feel free to reach out to your friendly product manager. I'm happy to meet with you.
I love that. Well, who doesn't want to have more conversations with you, Donna? And thank you so much for being here with us today. It's been a lot of fun.
Awesome. Love to be here.
And to all of you out there who clicked on the poll, keep that coming, keep that wish list clicking, and make sure you get all the follow-ups that you are looking for. I'm also going to remind you to head over to the handouts tab. Be sure that you get the Rubrik handout on data management for Kubernetes. This is a great follow-up to the conversation that we just had with Donna here. She was just saying right at the end there that some of you might already be customers and you might not have even known about some of these functionalities. So you can never learn enough, right? There's always more. There's always more to explore, and especially with a team like Rubrik. So make sure that you are clicking on this handout tab. Make sure you've got that saved and hold on to that to read a little bit further after we wrap up. But don't go anywhere yet because we've got lots more to get into today. And I do want to give away our very first prize. This is a $300 Amazon gift card. And a quick reminder that you do need to be here live and present at the webinar in order to win. Our very first lucky winner of a $300 Amazon gift card is George Dow of California. George Dow of California. Congratulations to you, George. As always, we will be in touch about claiming your prize after we wrap. Now, also, do not forget, sounds so formal. Don't forget that there is a best question gift card that we'll be giving away at the end of each of our sessions as well. So we review all the questions asked, even if we don't get to them in a live Q&A. And we review them after we've wrapped up the entire EcoCast, and then we follow up with that best question asked in each session. So by asking a question, you're being an awesome A+ human and getting that conversation rolling and getting new insight for yourself, but you are also entering yourself to win that $50 Amazon gift card. So keep that up. All right, my friends. Well, we are going to keep things rolling because here's the thing. Our EcoCast today is short and sweet, but absolutely packed with exciting info and cool takeaways. So here we are already at our very last presentation of the day, but we are definitely wrapping it up with a bang because we have here with us Matt Slaughton, Principal Solutions Architect at Kasten by Veeam. Matt, thank you so much for being here with us on the EcoCast. You're our grand finale. We've had a great day so far, and I'm really excited to wrap it up with you, hear a little bit more about what's going on at Kasten. Now, Keith is back here with us and waiting in the wings to get into some audience questions with you at the end. So I'm going to step back and hand things on over to you. Take it away, Matt.
Me here today. Super excited to be here and to present to everybody about understanding your cloud native data protection and disaster recovery options. Obviously, you're going to be focusing on Kasten by Veeam. My name is Matt Slaughton. I'm a principal solution architect here at Kasten. My focus is primarily on partners and our partner ecosystem. But that being said, obviously across all things in Kasten K10 and the product. So we're going to dive in a little bit today and just take a look at, what does it mean to have a cloud native backup solution, data protection solution? What are our options? What might we need to consider when we're trying to back up these workloads, and maybe how it's different than, maybe traditional backup. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into the presentation. And then towards the end, we'll definitely do a quick demo. And then obviously want to leave some time for Q&A there. So with that, let's dive in. All right, so enterprise Kubernetes data protection challenges. Obviously, Kubernetes, hopefully everybody on this call is familiar with Kubernetes, but if you are not, high level, it is the hot new thing since 2016, as I like to say. It's a container orchestration platform, right? So allowing us to use containerized workloads, deploy them in highly available manners. Obviously, it gives us the full ability to integrate into our CI/CD pipelines. But it is fundamentally different than a lot of traditional infrastructure or traditional information technologies or data centers in that we are looking at things through a different lens, right? So as a result, some high level stats just to kind of lay the land. We see that 74% of organizations think that traditional container-based applications can be backed up the same way as traditional infrastructure. That is not the case, unfortunately. I wish it was. It would make things a lot easier, right? So if we could use our traditional backup tools, obviously Kasten is a Veeam company. If we could use Veeam VBR to back up Kubernetes, that would be awesome. Veeam would be happy about it. It'd be a lot less engineering work. But unfortunately, that's just not the case, right? So we're looking at a different architecture. Maybe even if you're running Kubernetes on VMs, you can try to back up those VMs, but there's no telling that when you restore those backed up VMs, that your Kubernetes applications are going to come back in the same state or same way that they were, prior to backup. Which obviously your ability to your backups are only as good as your ability to restore. So really important there. So just keep that in mind as we kind of go through this and talk about cloud native backup and why it's maybe a little bit different. We'll dive in a little bit later too on how we're different with Kubernetes as well. But moving right along, moving to the right here, 85% of companies have experienced at least one ransomware attack in the past year. This number is increasing. Actually, this one's I think slightly out of date, even though this is from 2023 report. We are seeing an exponential increase in ransomware attacks, which is not easy to manage, right? And we're seeing a lot more in the news and the headlines. As consumers, I know here in the States, a couple years ago, there was that big gas pipeline was subject to a ransomware attack. I'm a car guy, so I actually had to get fuel. I was heading to a track day, and I could not get fuel because of that pipeline being shut down and compromised. And obviously, fortunately, that company was able to restore, and they were able to obviously get back online in relatively short fashion. But obviously, the ramifications were real, right? So that's just one example. Obviously, that one's at this point outdated. Again, if you go in the news almost every other week, you'll see some headlines around that. So definitely seen a lot more of that. So we need to keep that in mind when we're looking at all of our workloads, right? Whether those traditional infrastructure, your data center, or in this case, Kubernetes or cloud native workloads. We see that 93% of organizations think that multi-cloud support for container backup is important. And this makes sense, right? So, obviously we live in a hybrid world. Ideally, we are able to leverage different capabilities, different data centers, public, private, cloud, and put our workloads where we want them. So we want to make sure we avoid vendor lock-in if possible, right? So we need to make sure that we can support multiple clouds, whether again, on-prem, multiple public cloud providers, and have that flexibility, right? So it's something to keep in mind there too when we're looking at these backup and data protection solutions. And last but not least, 75% of organizations indicate a skill shortage in Kubernetes backup and recovery teams. And again, this makes sense, right? So Kubernetes, yes, it's been around since 2016, but things take time, especially things that have a fundamentally different architecture. So we see a lot of traditional infrastructure or backup admins kind of have to add Kubernetes into their kind of repository or their repertoire to back those up. And as a result, that obviously takes away from kind of traditional backup or traditional storage solutions, and it's a whole new fundamental technology that we have to learn. So definitely something that we are very much aware of here at Kasten, and we think our product hopefully helps alleviate this issue because we're always competing for time and resources. We can make sure that we can empower and enable our backup administrators or our platform engineers with quick, easy to use solutions. So moving right along, why do we need backup for Kubernetes, right? So, isn't Kubernetes stateless? There's no data in Kubernetes, right? It's all in my database or whatnot. Maybe that was the case in 2016. That is not the case in 2023, right? We are seeing another exponential increase just in the amount of persistent data workloads being deployed inside Kubernetes. Being deployed next to these containerized workloads. And it makes sense, right? From a development perspective, it's very easy for developers to quickly spin up a MongoDB container or a MySQL container next to their core application, right? And also from a performance perspective as well, we're not having, for that workload mobility, if we can move our application and our data together and leverage the capabilities of containerization, we don't have to worry about latency or having to go, across shores or undersea cables just to do a transaction or query. But as a result, we need to make sure we are protecting that persistent data, right? So just a couple of workloads, or a number of workloads we're seeing here. Most common one being Nginx, obviously proxies and web servers, but things like Redis and Postgres databases, Elasticsearch, Kafka, a lot of these are very advanced workloads. We're seeing more and more adoption within cloud native, and again, not just the application, but their data as well. So Kubernetes production demands more than just backup, right? So we kind of alluded to that earlier. Really important that our ability to back up is only as good as our ability to restore. So that's we want to focus really on data recovery, right? So just saying, hey, I'm taking snapshots or I'm taking backups, that's not enough, right? We need to make sure that we not only are taking those backups, but that we can restore those backups. Because again, if we can't, then there's no point in taking the backup. But really important there for disaster recovery as well, right? So in this hybrid cloud world, the advantages, maybe we have it on-prem and then we've got a small footprint in the public cloud, but if something happens on-prem, we have a major outage, power, what have you, the 1,000-year flood, we can easily spin up those workloads in the public cloud, but we need to make sure that we have the capability of that for in a disaster scenario with our backups and replication. Obviously, security is becoming ever more important. We need to make sure that we have our end-to-end encryption, access control, ability to audit, and most importantly, ransomware protection, right? We saw that number 85% and increasing. We need to make sure that we can protect our data, that we can recognize quickly that we are potentially subject to ransomware and go back to the last known good. So very important there. And of course, data freedom, right? So going back to kind of that cloud agnostic model on-prem, in public cloud, multiple public cloud providers, we want to make sure that we're not locked into one specific cloud provider or one specific backup technology that only works with one storage, whether it's, you choose your favorite storage. You want to make sure that, if you do one day decide to switch to a different storage vendor or have multiple storage vendors in your data center or multiple public clouds, that you can back up and restore to those as well. So what is Kasten? How do we fit into this picture? So obviously we all knew this slide was coming because I work for Kasten, but to go quickly through this, most importantly, or one thing that we're very proud of is we are Kubernetes native, right? So we are backing up Kubernetes workloads and we are deployed within Kubernetes. And this is really important, right? So this means that we are able to actually see the workloads that we are deployed next to. So from a performance perspective, from a audit perspective, to see those namespaces, we can quickly and easily identify new namespaces as they're deployed. We're not just a bolt-on, right? We're also able to leverage the benefit of Kubernetes, right? So by spinning up, if you kick off a backup job, we spin up the containers we need to perform the backup. And then when we're done, we spin them down. That saves on cloud resources. And then lastly, of course, we have the ability to everything we do within the user interface, we can basically do in YAML, right? So we can do that in an automated fashion. So, everything you configure within the Kasten K10 UI, we can export that YAML and put that into a pipeline around like something like Argo CD or some sort of policy management, and actually build that directly into our pipeline. So as our developers are rolling out new code, we can not only, in our pipeline deploy that new code, but also automatically implement backup policies to ensure that data is backed up. So really important there. And also we embrace being Kubernetes native in terms of our own disaster recovery, right? So we don't worry about backing up our casted instance. In fact, our DR approach is, if you lose a data center, we actually tell you to use the Helm command, deploy a new Kubernetes, a new K10 instance in the data center that you're trying to restore to, and we essentially point to our offsite replicated data and reseed that, right? So again, kind of embracing the true beauty of Kubernetes, as well as a true kind of stateless disaster recovery, and pulling our configuration as needed, rather than having to move a VM or something like that. Obviously, in light of ransomware, security everywhere, right? So out of the box, we have end-to-end encryption. So when you send anything up to the public cloud for your offsite backups, it is automatically enabled. You cannot disable it. So really important there, from talking about ransomware, or you maybe a malicious third party in your environment. So you cannot turn off encryption, right? So very important that we have that built in. We also are implementing a number of security monitoring and integration capabilities with things like Red Hat ACS, things like Argo CD, and then Kyverno, all of those third-party solutions. Because we're Kubernetes native, we can easily integrate with those, again, because we are agnostic and have that native YAML that we can tie into pipelines or tie into automation. But going down, getting ahead of myself with that YAML, ease of use, right? Really important there. Go back to that other stat about organizations being underskilled or understaffed from a Kubernetes backup resourcing perspective. We want to make sure that we make this really easy, right? We don't want to have our backup administrators or our platform engineers spending their days, tweaking, scripting, trying to get their backups to work, because we need them focused on keeping the lights on, right? So keeping it really easy, making things intuitive, ability to quickly and easily trigger backup jobs and policy-based backups. We do that all within the Cast and K10 interface. And of course, full ecosystem support. Essentially, we said any cloud, any Kubernetes, any app, we are agnostic, right? So as long as it's a CNCF certified version of Kubernetes, we will run on it and we can back it up. Same thing with things like backing storage. So CSI driver, the CSI standard. If there's a certified CSI driver that can do volume snapshot support, then we can use that to back up workloads on that storage. So again, no vendor lock-in. We give you that not only that data protection, but also that mobility capability as well, right? To be able to move applications amidst different public cloud or private cloud or hybrid cloud providers. So what is Kubernetes native backup, right? How is this kind of different, for my traditional backup administrators or people that are familiar with backing up physical or virtual infrastructure? So as mentioned before, Kubernetes is fundamentally different. At the end of the day, we do have underlying disk. You'll see at the bottom there, we've got our block and file storage. Maybe that's presented via something like a CSI driver or Ceph, or, if it's a public cloud provider, we do, more of a, before CSI, we had some kind of what we call in-tree storage. But long story short, we have physical disk, but we need to be able to talk to that disk, but via the Kubernetes mechanism, right? So via our persistent volume PVCs and volume snapshots. So we can do that directly via Kubernetes. As I mentioned before, we are deployed within Kubernetes. You see Cast and K10 here on the right next to our workloads there. So you'll see we've got 2 cloud native apps here, just generic apps. Then we've got our KubeVirt VM. So important thing to note there, because the world has come full circle. So now we can deploy virtual machines directly within Kubernetes. That's, again, kind of going full circle there. We went physical to virtual. Now we've got Kubernetes, and now we can put virtual on Kubernetes. But anyway, so we can back up those workloads as well. And we're able to leverage things like blueprints, where we can actually provide more advanced and application-aware backups, right? So if you're running something like Postgres or MySQL or data workloads that require some sort of quiescing of the disk, we can leverage things called blueprints within Cast and K10 and use application fingerprinting to apply those blueprints, so we can actually take those intelligent backups and make sure that those backups can be easily restored in a state that we expect them to be in. And then lastly, our external storage target up top. We support any S3 compatible storage, obviously S3 itself, things like MinIO. We obviously want to make sure we have immutability. We support Azure Blob as well. So that's our offsite replication, right? So we talk about 3-2-1 in the backup world. You want 3 copies of data on 2 types of media and 1 offsite. That external storage target is our 1 offsite. Beyond S3 or Azure Blob, we also support NFS as well for your external storage target. So obviously you want to make sure we can also extend and integrate and automate. I said, because we are Kubernetes native, we can get the YAML for all of these jobs. We can actually tie this into our pipelines and automate this in part of scripts or as pipeline automation as our developers are deploying their applications. So quick slide here, just like to tout this. We are the #1 in Kubernetes data protection, a 3-time leader for outperforming Kubernetes data protection per this GigaOM survey, and we continue to try to innovate. We innovate very quickly. We have 2-week release cycles. We release updates to our product every 2 weeks with at least one major major minor version 2 a year, essentially. So constantly innovating, adding features, adding third-party support, adding additional storage. We are constantly innovating, making sure that we can stay not aligned to, but even ahead of what we see going on in the industry. Security everywhere, again, really important here in light of ransomware and just kind of the world we live in. I miss the early days of the internet where it was all cat memes and instant messengers. Obviously there's a little bit more we need to worry about. So we need to make sure we have early threat detection. So integrating with things like Red Hat ACS or some sort of policy management, make sure we can alert on suspicious behavior as well. So we're starting to integrate with things like SIEMs, security incident and event management, to make sure we can raise what we see as anomalous behavior. That's easily integrated within CAST and K10. Keep an eye out for a release pretty soon, specifically in that space. Encrypted and immutable backups. As mentioned before, we have end-to-end encryption you can't turn off out of the box. Using S3 object locked and soon to be added Azure Blob lock as well. This ensures that our data, once it's backed up and replicated, cannot be manipulated. So really important there. Also worth mentioning, and I'm remiss that I didn't mention this earlier, because we are a Veeam company, we support Veeam VBR as a target repository as well. And with Veeam VBR version 12, they support not only immutability, but indelibility with a hardened Linux repository. So really important there too, working with our parent company there, Veeam, and making sure that we integrate with those solutions for those existing Veeam customers. And lastly, accelerated recovery, just to make sure we can quickly restore and minimize business downtime, making sure we meet those SLAs we have with agreement with the business, RTO, RPO requirements. Because we use policy-based backup, you can essentially apply policies and make sure your replication schedules meet your business need based on business application criticality. So moving right along, you didn't want to get in the demo here because I'm conscious of time here. So just a couple last slides, then we'll dive in. So CAST and K10, as I mentioned, cater to organizational needs, right? So we understand that Kubernetes we're seeing Kubernetes backup span two spaces, right? You've got your traditional storage and backup administrators on the left here, your platform ops or platform engineers on the right side here. The tool itself, CAST and K10 can cater to either workload, right? We can talk backup, we can talk storage at admins. We have things, like we said, Veeam, VBR integration, obviously have our 3-2-1 principles in place, restore, all of those things developed within the product, but also from our platform ops side, you're saying obviously automated policy deployment, CI/CD integration, making sure that we can support multiple clouds and automated backup policies. So just know that we can support the multiple personas there and hopefully speak the language that you speak. All right, so this is a heavy slide. I'm not going to spend too much time. It actually is slightly out of date too. Need to add this, but we are constantly adding additional third-party partners and vendors here. Long story short here, all the major players we pretty much support from a Kubernetes perspective, from a data storage perspective. We're constantly adding additional security services. So again, keep an eye out on that, a blog post the next week or two, as well as advanced workloads right on the far left there, things like Amazon RDS, Postgres, Kafka, MySQL, all of those persistent data workloads we support in terms of backing up using our capabilities within Blueprints. So diving into that automated policy management. So really good blog post and video on this if you're interested, but this is how we can integrate with automated policy using something like Kyverno. Because K10 or Kasten is cloud native and because we are a Kubernetes native, all of our CRDs are available for policy management, right? So this means that as part of our pipeline, we can ensure that as an application is deployed either in a new namespace or existing namespace, that there is a backup policy applied and that backup policy is scheduled to be executed, right? So really important there, just from a compliance and governance perspective, ensuring that our workloads are backed up. Again, sometimes it's tough with a lot of developers, a lot of teams, a lot of initiatives going on. So if you're manually trying to keep track of everything being deployed, it can be quickly get out of sorts, especially if it's not your day job, right? If you're focused on helping, back up other solutions or, help platform engineering, help with other supporting infrastructure for other solutions, really important to have this automation in your CI/CD pipeline. So really good integration there. And of course, as mentioned before, blueprints, right? So really important for those persistent workloads, right? So if you've got something like a Postgres database, being able to quiesce that data prior to taking our backup or snapshot and replicating that, we want to make sure that our database is in a good state. So when we bring it back, that we can bring it back in a state that will actually work, right? The last thing you want to do is have to go restore something and then have to go dig through logs or, all of a sudden your recovery time objective just gets blown out, right? We're missing our SLAs. So using things like app blueprinting is we're able to actually apply the same policy based on either a tag or, recognizing using things like regex to say, hey, this is a MongoDB database, let's make sure we apply our advanced backup policy and capabilities to this application type. And the last slide before we dive into a quick demo here. So transform sets, freedom of choice, as mentioned before, support multiple clouds. Beautiful thing about transform sets is it's really nice for a disaster recovery and a hot warm scenario, right? So maybe you have an on-premises data center and you're using a public cloud provider as your DR site. We can use transform sets to essentially keep a warm system running in the public cloud, but at a scaled down version, right? So leverage the benefits of Kubernetes. Maybe have your pod set, your replicas lower for that public cloud to reduce your compute costs, but maybe you have one worker node, one pod up, and then in a disaster scenario, you can quickly via transforms built into Cast and K10, spin up those number of replicas to make sure that you have enough to accommodate those production workloads. So really useful there. Also really useful for moving cross cloud. If you have different storage providers, we can do that with transform sets as well. Beautiful thing about infrastructure as code is that it is code, so that we can change things on the fly as we're moving them to or from different providers. All right, with that, I'm going to dive into a quick demo. I just want to show you guys the interface real quick and just how easy it is to set up a backup job. So you see here, I have an OpenShift, Red Hat OpenShift cluster deployed. In this case, I have OpenShift deployed on AWS, but this could be bare metal, could be on premises, doesn't have to be OpenShift either. It could just be Kubernetes, but I like the nice friendly interface of Red Hat. So that's what I've used here for my cluster. You can see here, if I go to workloads, I've got quite a few pods deployed, but in terms of apps, we're going to focus on Pacman. Obviously, this is a business critical app. We all know that with Pacman, we need to make sure that we protect our high scores, right? So if I go here and see, I've got my high score blue time. Looks like 910. It's not a very high score, but nonetheless, it's okay. And let's get eaten a couple times. And then we'll put a new score in there real quick. All right, so Ghost got me. So we'll call this backup cloud native. So I'll save that. Not the best score, 280, but I'll take it. All right, so heading over, here's my Cast and K10 interface here. You can see, because I'm deployed within Kubernetes, I can see all the namespaces I'm adjacent to. I'm going to go ahead and search for Pacman, because let's see. You can see here, I can see the Pacman app is deployed to this namespace. I don't have any policies created yet, so I'm going to quickly create one. I'll call it Pacman Backup. We'll say just snapshot, and we'll do hourlies, because we want to make sure we're getting all of our scores in there, really important. And I want to say enable snapshots via exports. I do not have a profile configured, but if I had S3, this is where I could export offsite. Again, check out videos if you want to see how we can support those offsite backups. But for the purpose of this demo, we're just going to do a quick backup and restore locally. And then you can see here, I also have the ability to use things called canister actions, which those are the blueprints, right? So we are using a MongoDB. I could use a blueprint to protect those scores, but in this case, we don't have a ton of transactions, so it should be fine. So I'll see create policy. I'll go ahead and say run once and let that go. And we can go back to our dashboard and actually see that job run. So what that's going to do is just trigger a local backup, and it'll go ahead and kick off and let us back up our Pacman workload. So conscious of time here, guys. Let's see. Make sure. So we run through our backup. That's good. Hopefully I applied the annotation to perform the backups of my storage as I think about this. I may have not. All right. Looks like I did. I say that. Yeah, maybe not. All right. Well, with that, definitely want to be conscious of time here. So let me swap over. We'll bring Pacman back up. But Keith, I know we've got a couple questions in there. So while that's performing a backup in the back end, if you can throw some questions my way, I'd love to run through those and hopefully help get those answered.
Absolutely. So the demo and all that took a lot of our time. I did want to say one important thing. So why Pacman and not Galaga? Right, I was more of a Galaga guy back in the day. So
it's because I'm awful. That's why.
All right, so I think we got time for just maybe one question and then maybe a call to action from you. So so here's a question, and more will be coming in, and I'm sure that Caston will be following up with all the questions that are coming in as well during this presentation. So here's a really good one. Why can't I just back up and restore etcd for Kubernetes for my workloads?
Great question. We hear this a lot in the field. So yeah, this definitely, on the surface, it would make sense, right? It's like etcd is the brain of Kubernetes. Why can't I just back up the brain and then restore the brain? And the best allegory I have for this for my virtualization administrators out there, and I come from a virtualization background, infrastructure background, is this would be kind of like the same thing as saying, hey, I back up my vCenter, therefore I back up my Kubernetes, therefore I back up my VMs, sorry. Keep with my allegory there, which, as we know, that's not the case, right? Just because vCenter has a database of your running VMs, you don't know the state those VMs are in. You need to actually back up the VMs, those workloads, and the applications within them. So yeah, common question we get. And there are ways, I don't want to say that you can't, there are ways to restore from etcd, but in terms of meeting those SLAs, RTO, RPO requirements, it can quickly get in the mud in terms of trying to get back to that state that you were in, when you're taking snaps of etcd. Kubernetes it has your desired state and your actual state. So you don't know that your actual state's going to meet your desired state if you just back up etcd. So that's a good question. That's why we need those workload specific backups.
All right, great. Now, again, there's more questions that are coming in. You will be getting back to everyone who asked one. What I do want to ask you now, finally, though, is if people want to take the next step with Kasten by Veeam, what should they do? Where should they go next?
Awesome. I appreciate it. Yeah, definitely take a look. So we have 5 fully featured nodes for free. So you can grab a license for 5 nodes for free. Sorry, fully featured Kasten K10 license. So check it out there. Free Kubernetes, kasten.io. Definitely reach out. Yeah, if you have any questions, I'm sure our team will be following up. And I appreciate everybody's time. And Keith, thank you for having me on today. I very much enjoyed it.
Oh, it was my pleasure, Matt. And I think I can speak for everyone when I say free is good. So we're looking forward to seeing more of what Kasten by Veeam is doing in the future. Thanks so much for your presentation.
Awesome. Thank you, Keith. Appreciate it.
Oh man, what a great presentation. I like Pac-Man, so I enjoyed that quite a bit. And I think we all learned a lot from that demo, from the presentation. I see a lot of high fives coming in from all of you out there, and I love that. Everybody's in a great mood for a Thursday? Is it Thursday? Oh my goodness, I thought it was Wednesday for a second there. Okay, for a Thursday, we're all in a really positive mood. That's because it's almost the end of the week, right? And it's been a good one, hopefully. Before we wrap up our EcoCast, before you head on out about the rest of your lovely Thursdays, I do want to make sure that you all are clicking on the wish list we have up on your screen here. This is a question of how you'd like to be followed up with. So Kasten by Veeam has lots of great information. Oh, Angela says it's Friday Eve. Yes, Angela, that is the way to think about it. Happy Friday Eve, all. All right, so if you're clicking on this list now, this is just going to let Kasten by Veeam know exactly what you're looking for in terms of follow-up, so you won't get anything you don't want, and you'll just get what you do want. And hey, how easy is that? So click on that easy button, click on that wish list, let Kasten by Veeam know how they can follow up with you. And that is my Friday Eve present to all of you. And speaking of presents, I am going to go ahead and give away a prize, but before I do that, I will also remind you to head over to the handouts tab. Make sure you have the Kasten by Veeam handout, which is actually the Kubernetes and data protection for dummies. It is such a fun and interesting read. Lots of great takeaways and a really cool format, of course. So please do go check that out. Make sure you've got that saved and downloaded and ready to rock after we wrap up the EcoCast. All right. Well, in celebration of this lovely Friday Eve, I have 2 more $300 Amazon gift cards to give away to 2 more lucky people who are here live and present with us at the EcoCast. And then I will read out the entire prize winners list. All 3 of you. All right. So gift card number 2 going to Terry McCopp of Texas. Terry McCopp of Texas. And gift card number 3 going to Eric Semple of Colorado. Eric Semple of Colorado. That whole winners list one more time: George Dow of California, Terry McCopp of Texas, and Eric Semple of Colorado. Congratulations to all our winners. As always, we will be in touch about claiming your prize after we wrap. Now, also keep in mind that best question gift card, still opportunities to win that. We review all the questions asked after we wrap. So keep those questions coming in. You still have time to get those questions in, and we'll review all of them. Angela, I love your positivity. She says, congratulations, you guys. Congrats to all the winners today. And I echo that. Aren't we all winners though, right? We're all here. We're all winners here today on the EcoCast. I'm going to go with that. I feel like a winner today. All right. Well, if you are here on the MegaCast, EcoCast, whatever Boy, folks, I tell you, my brain is folding in on itself this afternoon. If you are here on the EcoCast today and thinking that you would like to join in, maybe an EcoCast, maybe a MegaCast, who knows? We would love to have you come be a part of the conversation. So reach out to us via email at connect@actualtechmedia.com. And with that, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to once again thank our incredible speakers here with us today, our Kubernetes captains from Rubrik and from Kasten by Veeam, for making this EcoCast possible. But speaking of which, and as always, the biggest thank you has to go to all of you for attending, for asking some great questions, for participating in this conversation, and just being a part of this community of engaged learners that we have out here. You know, there's a lot of opportunities with all of the evolutions that we're seeing in the world around us, and within our tech industry and our specific verticals as well. Just constant growth, constant evolution. There's a lot to be scared of. There's a lot to be worried about. And there's a lot to be excited about. And so when we have those moments of feeling slightly overwhelmed by change, or maybe even a little bit of the hear no evil, see no evil kind of response, we just want to cover our eyes and ears and not have anything to do with it. If that's ever hitting you, you know, these webinars are a great place to recharge, to shake loose, to try something new, to learn about something new, to remind yourself of something you haven't thought about in a while, and just kind of re-kickstart those cogs. Because hey, it's a fast race, it's a long race. We are constantly moving, and this is a great way to reboot, re-energize, and check your trajectory. Are you going in the direction that you want? Are you supercharging as much as you can and you want to? So I hope that you've all kind of gotten something out of the conversation today. You're walking away with some ideas, some opportunities in mind, some ways that maybe you can get into that enhancing or protecting, or maybe just understanding a little bit more about Kubernetes environments and your cloud native applications. But most of all, and as always, I hope you had fun with us today. I hope you had a good day with us and enjoyed your time. And I hope that you will all mark your calendar, come back and join us for the MegaCast on Tuesday, November 7th at 12 p.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. We're going to be talking about SuperCloud, the cloud of clouds, including on-prem and the edge. I promise not to do that voice the entire time, but I promise you I will do it at least a few times, because how can you not? We're talking about SuperCloud. So come join me. Let's talk about the cloud of clouds. Hang out with me at the MegaCast Tuesday, November 7th, again, 12 p.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. I cannot wait to see you all there. And until then, happy Friday Eve. Happy Friday. Have an absolutely beautiful end to your week.